Does anybody know what I did for my expedition?
Road. Yeah.
Road.
Like here into Atlantic.
The Atlantic Ocean.
The Atlantic Ocean, that's right. I went across the North Atlantic Ocean, to be specific. The Atlantic Ocean is the 5th smallest ocean in the world, okay? And it kind of fits into this little gap of the globe here. So my trip was across from the east side across to the west side, which is from just south of Europe, so in a place called Gran Canaria, in the Canary Isles. Has anyone ever been to the Canary Isles before? Yeah.
I have, but I was like 2.
Okay, so we went from Gran Canaria across to Barbados, which is in the West Indies. Okay, and the purpose behind the trip was I was trying to raise money for charity, and also I was trying to set a world record. The trip took us across about 3,000 miles of open water. So the team consists of 8 guys. This is obviously me. We have Peter here, who's an English chap who's studying at college. We have Levan, who's from the Borders, who was a skipper. We have Tim, who was the first Australian guy across the Atlantic. He's an Australian police officer. We have James, who was a maths teacher from down south. We have Jan, who's a designer from England. We have Levar, who is a Viking from the Faroe Isles. And we have Benno, who's from Perthshire. So we left at night. And we had a bit of a farewell party with a couple of hundred folk on the pontoons. That's the noise of all the boats making their sounding their horns as we left the harbour.
Is that when you were thinking, oh my god?
Yeah, we didn't know what to do. It was quite surreal, because we were just rowing into the dark, you know. So we're just leaving the safety of the harbour, rowing into the dark, and we had no idea what was going to happen after that, to be honest. Yeah, a bit of a surreal situation to be in.
So the time is 5:05 on Friday the 18th of January. We're 22 hours into this awesome voyage, and we've just been informed by Levan, the skipper, that if we can travel at 4.3 nautical miles an hour.
It gets a little bit technical there. We were talking about the world record right from the start, because that was our main ambition once we started. So this is my cabin, this is where I slept. So I shared this cabin with the skipper.
Was there more than one cabin?
Yeah, this is the aft cabin, so this is the back of the ship, and then we have a forward cabin right at the front, which is where the other crew members stay. So we row for 2 hours at a time, yeah, and when we're not rowing, we're sleeping. Because that 2-hour pattern starts the moment we leave Gran Canaria, and it finishes when we hopefully hit Barbados. So we only ever have an hour and 45 minutes or an hour and a half of sleep at any one time. So it's pretty relentless.
You did that for 30 odd days.
Yeah, no, you don't have to laugh at what I was wearing there, right? So I got sponsored by ball bags, which is the boxer shorts. So they provided me with the most horrendous colour of boxer shorts, which I used in different colour for a different day to keep everyone's morale up. But this is me changing positions. So this is what I had to do every 4 hours basically when I came on shift. I had to walk up the boat, and then Levan, who's the skipper, would then go into my cabin, and I would take over from his position.
So did the other 3 keep on rowing while the one person changed over?
Aye. So what we do is we stagger the changes in 40 minutes intervals. So we're on the oars for 2 hours, so as soon as I sit down, I don't stand up for another 2 hours, so I row for that time. But 40 minutes into my shift, the person at the front change, Tim, will then change with his partner. And then 40 minutes later, positions 2 and 3 change with their partners. And then 40 minutes later, it's the end of my 2 hours, so I change with Levan again. So we stagger the changes so that not everyone's standing up at the same time, and not everyone's changing position at the same time. So we stagger that so that we all have energy. The hardest thing is in the middle of the night getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and having to row in the dark for 2 hours, or 1 o'clock in the morning having to row in the dark. Daytime stuff's fine because you can see things, but at night time it's pretty difficult just to get up.
How do you know where you're going?
That's a great question. Right, we know where we're going by. We have special instruments on the boat. So we have a GPS. Do you know what a GPS is? Global Positioning System. So the satellites that circle the Earth all the time, and they send down signals to your GPS system. So we had GPS, and the GPS is hooked up to a thing called an autohelm, and the autohelm is hooked up to the rudder. So the autohelm steers the rudder. So it's all done by computers nowadays.
Alright, so nobody actually does, oh, I need to do that bit a wee bit and that bit a wee bit.
Well, we did have to do that because our auto helm broke, and we carry spares because in like any kind of expedition, you don't know what's going to happen, eventualities, so you carry spares. But the spare broke, and then the other spare broke, and then we ended up having to steer by hand. So I'll show you some videos of me steering by hand later on. But this is basically our food. This is our daily ration pack. So every day we'd pick up a ration pack, and that would do us for the day. So we've got there's 8,000 calories in this, so it's quite a lot of calorific intake. But there's 3 freeze-dried main meals, everything from different types of curries to bacon, eggs and beans. We've got 5 different chocolate bars, some high energy drinks, some high energy flapjacks. We've got super noodles and cup of soups and all sorts of things. So there's lots and lots of stuff to eat on board the boat. Yeah.
Did you ever do something wrong and then they'd shout at you?
Well, you have to be very diplomatic on the boat, and I was second in charge on the boat, so that nobody shouted at me, definitely, but nobody shouted at anybody. You can't, because you're in a really small space, you can't really let negative conversations happen on the boat, or you can't really, fall out with them because there's nowhere to go. As soon as you fall out with somebody, then that's the trip over. So we did see some wildlife around the trip as well, So we've got an underwater camera, so at one point we had some dolphins which were swimming around the boat, which is quite cool. And then, we get into Barbados and all of a sudden we're standing on the shore, again.
What was that feeling like you're back on land after being in the water for so long? Is it not quite weird?
It was
sea legs and the thing, you sort of swaying and stuff.
Yeah, no, totally. For 36 hours we were totally swaying because for 35 days we hadn't stopped moving. When you're on a boat, you just don't stop moving at all. So when you step onto solid ground which isn't moving, your body's still moving. So for a day and a half we were still swaying about the place, But so we're coming into Barbados. You go around the north of Barbados and you come into the harbour, and there's a big welcoming party. There's maybe a couple of hundred people there, and then all of a sudden you're on dry land. And we arrived at 4 o'clock in the morning, and Vicky, my partner, had arranged for the chef to come out and cook us a meal. So at 5 o'clock in the morning we sat down to a big steak dinner, which was excellent. This is the first real bit of meat that we've eaten for a good while. So we basically we stayed in this place in Barbados, and it was just on a big marina, and so we had all the home comforts. But that was strange to get your head around because for the last 35 days, which is not a huge expedition meal, but we had our bare minimum stuff. But everything, because we're limited to 5 kilograms of equipment that we could take on per person, so we didn't have anything. I had my computer and my camera and stuff, but it was very limited. And then to suddenly move into palatial place with.
Did people lose a lot of weight?
We lost about 2 stone. Yeah, most folk lost about 2 stone. Yeah. That's what a flying fish looks like. Yeah.
Did you
Now, the strange thing is though, because it just catches out your eye, and so you see this thing in your eye and you think it's a bird, obviously, and but it's not. It flies about 2 meters above the seawater, and it just glides through the air for 300 meters. It flies for ages and ages. The best thing we saw on the trip, wildlife-wise, the reason they fly at the water is because they're getting chased by a predator. And the best thing that we saw was all of a sudden about 50 flying fish coming out of the water, and then 2 yellowfish tuna chasing them. They came out of the water as well, and then realised that they can't fly. Splashed back in the water, but then these flying fish just disappeared. The funniest thing in the trip, or the most unusual thing on the trip, is when you get hit by a flying fish. But the funniest thing on the trip is when your teammate or your crewmate gets hit with a flying fish because you don't know what's coming. Especially at night time, so you'll be rolling about and you'll be, an hour and 45 minutes into your shift, miles away into your own mind. You're just thinking of completely different things. Then all of a sudden you get slapped in the face by a fish.